Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about our least favorite show on television, Adam Ruins Everything, who recently got in on a troubling trend going on in liberal circles right now. With climate change hysteria at an all-time high, we've seen the left-wingers come up with some pretty crazy ideas to try and supposedly combat that over the past few months. First, there's the ridiculously impractical Green New Deal, which asks our country to not only stop using gas-powered cars and airplanes, but also they want us to stop eating meat, particularly cow meat, which produces the most environmentally negative gases due to the cows farting so much. Not kidding, this was all in the Green New Deal. So it's no wonder that this over-the-top, unreasonable proposition got literally 0 votes in the Senate earlier this year. But despite these ideas already failing, the Democrats still press on though, and they've now come up with more and even crazier and stupid ideas in an effort to top AOC's already failed Green New Deal. Recently, there's been a huge wave of liberal propaganda pushing for Americans to replace the meat eating in our diets with eating bugs. That's right. And if you do a simple internet search about this, you can see that there are countless articles being pushed out in the past few weeks promoting bug diets for our country and the world. Sounds pretty insane and highly unnecessary, but also it's not exactly surprising after we've seen all this other crazy stuff that the left has been promoting lately as ways for us to stop this climate change boogeyman that they themselves created, which is really their way to gain more control and power, and also it's their way to belittle and crush the hopes of the masses by first telling us that we're destroying the world, which will end in a few years, and now they're trying to dehumanize us and make us eat bugs like we're animals or peasants or children. That way we look up to them, the liberals, on their high and mighty Democratic Party towers and presume they have more authority over us up in their ivory towers in Hollywood and New York City. That brings us back to the topic of today's video. Adam Ruins Everything recently got in on this bug-pushing liberal agenda because, of course he did. Adam always loves to toe the line with the most radical and progressive Democrats out there, as we've seen time and time again. The latest Adam Ruins Everything garbage comes from a clip they posted on their True TV YouTube page. And despite it not getting heavily disliked yet, the video also isn't doing very well at all, especially for a channel with over 2 million subscribers. And that's probably because of the obvious. It literally says we should all be eating bugs, and also it says we are already eating them? I don't know about that one. I also highly doubt this is an instance where the left-wingers preaching this shit are going to follow what they say. They currently refuse to use electric cars themselves, and they also won't switch to trains instead of planes, like what they're pushing for us to do. And also, elitists like AOC, Obama, and even Al Gore, they refuse to move away from the coastal cities because of the water levels possibly rising, like they say they will. In fact, those 3 people just mentioned, they just bought homes for their families near the oceans, completely contradicting what they preach to us once again. So do we really think that any of these Democrats or Adam Ruins Everything are going to start eating bugs themselves? Hell no. They just want to preach about that shit and push it on to other people who are ignorant enough to listen to them. And it's also clearly being used as a way to control and manipulate the masses, and also possibly weaken us too. I highly doubt professional athletes or bodybuilders are going to be able to build muscle mass by eating cockroaches. So perhaps this is another way for the left-wingers to try and weaken the population at large, much like how they try and take away our weapons so we can't protect ourselves either. With all that said, let's go ahead and jump into this Adam video and discuss what's being said specifically and why it's so stupid and wrong. Things start off here with a fake cooking show. Adam is the presenter in a bug cooking version of Chopped called Squished. This is admittedly one of his show's funnier premises too. I actually giggled here, except it all gets undermined by the fact that Adam and his crew actually think people should be eating bugs legitimately. If this were a joke, like it should be, we would see these chefs attempting to cook with bugs and making food that looks gross and struggling to make their bug-filled dishes look tasty and appetizing for television. This would be a good parody of left-wingers too. It actually looks like the setup for a good comedy sketch to make fun of them and how far they've gone and become. But alas, as we've seen for years now, the left is pretty much beyond parody at this point. Here they are essentially making a parody of themselves, or what looks like a joke version of themselves, but actually, in the end, it ends up being genuine and sincere. Can't really make this kind of craziness up. Next, Adam says this zinger of a line. The truth is, bugs are already in most of our foods, and there's nothing unsafe or even unhealthy about it. And well, I don't think we even need to challenge the unsafeness or unhealthiness of eating bugs. I'm sure they can be perfectly safe in some situations, so long as they're not poisonous or dirty or something, but the truth is, people don't want to eat bugs for different reasons. Besides there obviously being better alternative food sources out there, also, bugs on their own aren't an appealing dish to most sane and rational people. Bugs look scary, taste weird, and they seem gross upon touching them. And they also have terrible consistency feces in your mouth, and it just feels weird to think about chewing them up. They taste like thin bubble gum or something. I don't know, I haven't tried them, but I can imagine. Basically, we're not eating bugs for far different reasons than what Adam's arguing against here, because he's arguing against no one. He's just straw-manning his opponents once again, so we can easily bat them down, even though these are things we never said. And before this line, Adam had another sneaky way of saying we already eat bugs. He made an idiotic point that lobsters and crawfish are technically bugs themselves, and since people already eat them, so hey, Adam thinks he got us here. I would call shenanigans on this right away, and I would also say Adam is stretching and trying to get us on some kind of bullshit technicality. Also, if you can find me some other smaller bugs that look and taste as delicious as lobster, by all means. I'm sure many of us would give that a try. The truth is, even though the term arthropod can be used to describe both some kinds of seafood and also many bugs, that doesn't mean they're actually as similar as Adam and his silly show leads on. Really, they're struggling to make bugs look like enticing foods to eat here, and they're trying to trick us by saying, hey, you already eat bugs technically, so why not just eat more or eat all bugs for all of your diet and go all the way? But this sleight of hand and stretching of the truth here is pretty obvious and not convincing at all, and the shady, underhanded way Adam is going about this makes his real goals here seem even more nefarious than before. Why the hell do these liberal assholes want us to eat bugs anyway? I've already went over my initial guesses extensively, but the more we go at this, the more worried I get that there's even scarier reasons for this trend that's becoming so prevalent in liberal circles. Next, Adam goes on with this we're already eating bugs bit by talking about the bits and pieces of bugs that inevitably end up in our produce, canned foods, and so on. And this is obviously going to happen as bugs can sneak into our food at restaurants or even in the farms and where we buy our foods from. And there's no denying that some bugs and their parts do end up in our food on occasion, but it's certainly not as much as what's implied here. Just look at this over-exaggerated picture they show, showing whole bugs in canned tomatoes or something. This isn't really the case at all, of course. And minor amounts of bugs that do end up in our food currently, they mostly go unnoticed because they're so small and undetectable. Accidentally eating a few small bug parts in your food once in a while is far different than switching over and making bugs the main parts of our diets. Asking people to willingly eat bugs because they might accidentally have eaten a few before and once in a while, well, that's pretty absurd. The average meat eater in many countries will not start eating bugs like this, period. But especially, we won't be convinced by a poorly thought out, manipulative, and misleading argument like what Adam's presenting. Next, Adam says this head scratcher. If you eat 100 pounds of chocolate, you'll have eaten 1 entire pound of bugs. Just when I thought his arguments couldn't get any more stupid too. I mean, come on. Who the hell is eating 100 pounds of chocolate anyway? Sure, we eat lots of different chocolate flavored things on American diets, but to consume 100 pounds of pure chocolate is a pretty huge stretch. To spread that out over time, that would mean you would have to eat 2 whole pounds of Hershey's chocolate bars every week for about a year in order to get to the 100 pounds referenced here. Pretty absurd unless you're some kind of extreme chocolate lover or a big giant fatty. And I guess Adam brings up this ridiculously high number so we can end it with saying the gotcha line of, you'll have eaten 1 entire pound of bugs. Wow, look at me. Never mind the fact that 90% of people would never consume that much chocolate in an entire year, but hey, Adam is not known for being direct, honest, or straightforward with his arguments. If he was, he would have portrayed this chocolate bit like how it actually is. He would say something like 1% of chocolate ends up being bug parts. Still sounds a bit gross to me, but it's also pretty negligible all things considered. And knowing what we already know now about how bugs just happen to end up in lots of our foods because they live in our world and particularly they cover most of the farms that grow our food ingredients, well, keeping all that in mind, 1% really isn't that high at all. That's why Adam misleads his statement here and bumps his example up to 100 pounds of chocolate to make it seem like average Americans eat a pound of bugs and they don't even know it, when really that's not quite true at all, except in some extreme cases. Next, Adam moves on from accidental bug eating to foods that contain bugs intentionally. This part is just as forced and misleading too, though, because the same arguments against this pretty much apply here too. For example, the first food mentioned is milkshakes and sausages, which can happen to use red dye made from scaling bugs. But this is again a very small, probably less than 1% amount of the food as a whole. And even though some bugs can be used to produce food dyes and other consumable products, that doesn't mean we're going to start eating bugs wholly and fully and start to reform our diets around eating bugs for our protein completely. completely. And that's where this whole bullshit video is going with this too, make no mistake. But as we've seen so far, they are doing so in shady, underhanded ways that don't actually make sense if you think about them for more than just a second. Finally, after a cringy elimination scene where the show jokingly kicks out one of its bug-cooking chefs, in line with the initial competition show parody going on here, well, after that, they up the ante and suggest that Americans eat up to 2 pounds of bugs unintentionally or without knowing it each year. This is again another place to bring scaling back into the discussion, to put a good context on things so we're not being misled. Much like with the 100 pounds of chocolate line earlier, saying we eat 2 pounds of bugs a year is intentionally trying to mislead us and make it seem like it's more. That sounds like a lot by itself on its own, but keep in mind, most humans eat between 3 to 5 pounds of food per day. So even if you're on the low end, if you multiply 3 pounds of food per day times 365 days per year, that's 1,095 pounds of food per year, which really makes this 2 pounds of bugs we accidentally consume seem like nothing. In the end, Adam makes the expected turn to basically saying if we accept eating bugs and do it more, we could save the world. Classic liberal propaganda tactic. We all know they love thinking of themselves as some sort of superhero, but saving the world by eating bugs is certainly a new low here. And well, while I won't argue that the world's growing population is becoming a problem, I certainly don't think making us all eat bugs is the best solution, or even an actual solution at all. Frankly, I would rather die eating Chick-fil-A and cheeseburgers, rather than live longer but having to eat crickets and cockroaches. Also, once again, as with climate change and the environmental angle, which is also brought up at the end here, I think this all is another case of liberals overhyping these problems and using these seemingly scary world issues as a way to manipulate people to get what they actually want, which they don't tend to tell you. Now, whether the liberals' actual goals are more control or more resources for themselves or even a weakening of the population, that all depends on who you ask and who's trying to manipulate you at the time. But I know one thing for sure, I'm certainly not falling for this whole we should all eat bugs or the world's going to end bit, and I don't think you guys should either. What do you guys think here? Are you buying into this whole current wave of pro-bug eating propaganda? And don't you think it's ironic that this is all being pushed here by Adam Conover, a person who many would call a bug man himself? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time.